What is your view about what Donald Trump is doing right now?
Well, he's running Vladimir Putin's lines. I mean, if you look at the interview, a long interview that Vladimir Putin did with Tucker Carlson, Putin made all these points, that Zelensky's a dictator, it's not a democracy, that Ukraine started the war. These are all Putin's points. So we have the shocking, appalling, but I regret to say somewhat predictable and predicted situation where the President of the United States is siding with a Russian dictator, a murderous dictator who has invaded a sovereign democracy, Ukraine, and siding with the invader, not Ukraine. So it's mind-blowing, but that's the world we live in. I mean, Trump is not an aberration. I mean, when he got elected the first time, a lot of people felt it was a fluke. The Republican Party many of them, perhaps most of them, were very ambivalent about him. This time he's in total command of the Republican Party, and he won that election. He won it in the Electoral College and on the numbers. And his vice president is singing off the same song sheet. So this is the new world, the new world of disorder.
So this new world of disorder, as you've just described it, we've had a set of rules since World War II, which we've adhered to. Are they now broken?
Well, Trump is in the business of breaking them, yeah, for sure. I mean, he does not believe in the international rules-based order. Trump believes that might is right. So he has the same view of geopolitics as Vladimir Putin does, or indeed, arguably, you could say Xi Jinping does, although the Chinese would say that they do believe in a rules-based order. But let's face it, he's a classic strongman who is saying, I'm big, I'm stronger than you, therefore I can do what I want. I mean, look at the way he's sought to bully Denmark or Canada or other countries. And so the big question is, what does Australia do about it? Well, I mean, obviously, firstly, our leaders should say, regarding his recent statements, that they're wrong and that he should stand up for Ukraine. But Trump would say, well, what are you going to do about it, Australia? I don't see any Australian troops on the battlefield in Ukraine. I mean, the Australian government isn't even prepared to have its embassy based in Kyiv. So we're hardly, we don't have a lot of bragging rights or influence there. But then the question, sorry, you go on.
You go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I just want to know, what do you think they should say? Because the leaders have been asked today, and they have stood up for Zelensky.
They should do that. Yeah, they should do that.
Have they gone far enough?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can go as far as you like. I mean, but ultimately, we should be saying, and I think vast majority of the world will be saying this, is that what Trump is saying about Zelensky is not only wrong factually, but it's wrong morally. So he is essentially he appears to be at the point of facilitating a victory for Vladimir Putin over Ukraine. Now, just contemplate that. It is mind-blowing. But then the question is, what does that mean for us? And we have to recognise the world has changed, America has changed. And we cannot assume that we can rely on America in the way we have in the past. Unfortunately, the AUKUS submarine deal that Morrison did and Albanese has continued with, sacrificed Australian sovereignty, made us more reliant on the United States than ever before. And the timing was exquisitely bad, because we are now more reliant on America than ever at a time when America is less reliable than ever. And that's not just a bug, that's a feature. I mean, Trump is saying to allies, you can't rely on us. You've got to do more for yourselves. You've got to stand up for yourself. So we've got to ask ourselves, are our current arrangements working? And I would say they are not fit for purpose any longer. And we have to spend more money on our own defence, but on capabilities and systems that we control. That we have to focus on our own sovereignty and defending ourselves, and not not just assuming that we're always going to be part of some coalition with the Americans. We cannot rely on the new America in the way we have in the past.
We know your views on AUKUS and particularly the submarine deal, but I just want to tease out whether this is a broader view you have beyond the deal on submarines. Is the Australia-US alliance in the same shape it's always been, or has it been radically undermined by these latest comments by Donald Trump?
Well, it is different, right? I mean, Trump is transactional. He is totally focused on American self-interest. What is his slogan? America first. So we cannot assume that America has any altruistic regard for Australia. You know, we have got to be able to defend ourselves, and we've got to be prepared to stand up for ourselves. Now, you know, I stood up to Trump. I stood up to Obama, for that matter, less colourfully, I guess, or notoriously. But the reality is, we've got to be prepared. Our leaders have got to stand up for Australia, and we've got to have the ability to defend ourselves. And so instead of focusing on capabilities that are now enable us to integrate with the US Navy in the South China Sea or the broader Pacific, we have to be thinking about how we defend this continent, this Australian continent, how we defend ourselves and how we defend ourselves in our region. Because we could be alone. You know, we cannot assume that the America that we're dealing with today, particularly as it evolves over the years to come, is going to be prepared to do much, if anything, to defend us.
And what is your assessment of the way our leaders, obviously Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, but Peter Dutton too, are dealing with this alliance? I mean, they may have backed Zelensky today, but there's a lot of caution about Donald Trump. They're obviously not wanting to undermine the alliance. Do you think they should be saying other things?
They're not. It's not the question of the alliance, is they're scared of Trump. They're scared that he will impose tariffs. And so, in other words, they're doing exactly what a bully wants you to do, which is to knuckle under, okay? So it's just timidity and fear, that's all. The reality is the alliance is different because the United States has changed, not us. So, you know, we have got to be able to appeal to American self-interest, but at the end of the day, we have to be able to defend ourselves. Now, one of the problems we have is that you have bipartisan support for AUKUS, particularly AUKUS Pillar 1 with submarines. It was a Morrison's, terrible decision, I think a catastrophic decision, which Albanese, for purely political reasons, adopted. And so the difficulty is our political system is failing. So if there is a hung parliament, then I hope that the crossbench will ensure that AUKUS is looked at objectively and these arrangements are looked at objectively and held up to the light of real public accountability, and we can have a proper debate about what we need to do to defend Australia. Because at the moment, you've essentially got, I mean, bipartisanship is fine, people always say, isn't it a pity there isn't more bipartisanship. But when you've got bipartisan error or bipartisan gaslighting, that's essentially where we are at the moment. I mean, we have to recognise the world has changed. America has changed. Trump is not an aberration. He was democratically elected and he has huge following. And he's got a lot of people in government, in the Congress, that agree with him. And so this is the world we live in. So you think that the crossbench,
and you're right, all of the polling is suggesting we'll have a hung parliament. Of course, the election has to be run and fought. You've run in elections, you never know what will happen. But if it is a hung parliament, you're urging the crossbenchers to use their negotiation to shift the support away from AUKUS and to revisit the way that we approach and deal with America.
Well, I think we have to, for a start, we have to have what I'd be saying, and I say this to all parliamentarians, present and potential, we have to be honest and ask ourselves some serious questions. I mean, we know that it is most unlikely that we will ever get any American submarines because their Navy will not be able to spare them, okay? They will put the interests of their own Navy first. We know that the British submarine industrial base is shambolic. We know that Britain's defence industry is in disarray. We know that Britain is going to have to focus on Europe. I mean, the consequence of America withdrawing support from Europe is the Europeans are going to have to more focus there. So, all of that tells you that deal that I think was a massive mistake in 2021 when Morrison did it, it let Australia down shamefully. It looks even worse today. And so that we've got to look at that clear-eyed, objectively, don't delude ourselves, don't worry about offending anybody, and just focus on how we defend this country and be in a position to do so standing on our own 2 feet.
Now, just another question which is very much related. Donald Trump has frozen foreign aid, as you know. There are reports today that it stopped vital projects in this region that we're focused on, the South Pacific. Some people say it's risking lives and hurting US efforts to really woo the region, which they had been previously working on. Where does that leave us in this region, especially when it comes to China? Do you see the US as abandoning the region?
Well, I mean, it's probably too early to say whether they're abandoning it. But I mean, US aid, which is America's foreign aid program, has been frozen, as you said, and it appears that they're firing most of the people in that agency. That will do that. Obviously, people will suffer. People will die. Hospitals won't be maintained. Health programs won't be supported. It will have terrible consequences in the countries that were receiving that aid. But at a strategic level, it will do America enormous damage in terms of its prestige and influence, and other countries will have to take up the slack in the Pacific. We will have to do some of that. But China will absolutely take advantage of that. And when Trump was first president, I think Xi Jinping made a mistake in trying to sort of emulate Trump in belligerence and aggression, and you had all that wolf warrior diplomacy, the economic coercion. We suffered from that, as did other countries. This time and that didn't work for them, but this time they will be more steady. They will seek to be, if you like, the antithesis, the opposite of Trump, and they will take advantage of this. So Trump is not only in the process of giving Putin a win in Ukraine, but simply by his conduct, he will enable China to expand its influence. Now, I'm not suggesting Australia is going to abandon ANZUS and become a treaty ally of China, but there are a lot of countries that are in the middle, like most of ASEAN, for example, that have been trying to balance between the US and China. And if they feel the US is walking away from them, they will say, oh, well, we'll move closer to China. And I'm sure that will happen.